Both Labour and the Conservatives have committed Britain to the same fiscal rule. And it's this: by the end of the next parliament, or within 5 years, debt as a proportion of GDP should be falling. Now, it's an arbitrary rule. It's a very technical rule, sort of picked out of thin air. And it is the rule that we're often told is the reason why we can't have nice things, why we can't have high-speed rail that goes beyond Birmingham, why we can't have a green energy system, why we can't have hospitals that don't fall down. Right? This is all because it would break the fiscal rule. As I say, it's arbitrary. And the proof is this: the Tories don't even understand it. And not just the Tories in general, the chief financial secretary to the Treasury. So the person who's supposed to be totting up all the numbers. They work for the chancellor's, the person with the big ideas. The chief financial secretary to the Treasury is supposed to tot up all the numbers and make sure, dot the I's and cross the T's. Well, she's called Laura Trott, and she doesn't understand the fiscal rule. She was speaking yesterday on Radio 4 to Evan Davies.
What is puzzling me is how you can be even talking about tax cuts when a central pledge is getting debt down and debt is going up.
So the central pledge is one of our fiscal rules, which is that debt needs to be falling over the 5-year fiscal forecast as a percentage of GDP, which it is.
No, it's higher in 5 years than now.
Not as a percentage of GDP.
Yeah, no, it's higher. It's going up. It's lower in the 5th year relative to the 4th year. So it goes down at the end of the projection. But in 5 years, I think it's higher at the end of the project. Yeah, 23.4, 89% of GDP. 28.9, it's 93% of GDP. Debt goes up. It falls at the end of 5 years a little bit. But that doesn't mean debt is coming down. That means debt is going up. It's higher. It's higher in 5 years than now.
It's falling as a percentage of GDP.
It's higher as a percentage of GDP.
I'm not sure. I think.
Well, this is really basic. I'm looking at the latest OBR table. Public sector net debt ex Bank of England, 28.9, 92.8%, 23.4, 89%. So it's up in 5 years. Now, I'm amazed that you don't know that debt is rising, but you're the one who's planning. I'm looking at the percentage of GDP.
This is. I think I need to have the figures. I've got different figures, so I think we just need to.
Okay, let's just suppose if debt is higher on the OBR forecast in 5 years than now, you couldn't possibly be cutting taxes while your pledge is that debt should be falling.
The point is that we have our fiscal rules, and within those we have an amount of headroom. So we will only do things that are fiscally responsible and sit within our fiscal rules.
It's a really, really big point, this, isn't it? And one of us has obviously got it wrong. I think I'm looking at the right table, and I think I'm looking at the right line. And it's possible that the figures will all change. But at the moment, it looks to me like debt is higher in 5 years than it is now. And you're still talking about tax cuts. And I'm just wondering how you do that if you're pledging debt falling is one of your key 5 pledges.
Percentage of GDP over the 5-year forecast. Yes,
I'm looking at the percentage of GDP line. That's the only relevant one.
So I think that we've always said that we will only do things within our fiscal rules and where it is affordable for us to do so. So yes, we want to cut taxes. We believe that drives growth, but we will only do it if it sits within our fiscal rules.
Laura Trott, interesting conversation. We should probably both go and look at the books, make sure we haven't made a mistake. But obviously, really interesting point about whether debt is going up or going down on your watch.
So that was very embarrassing, I think, for the chief financial secretary to the Treasury. A very polite way for Evan Davies to end the interview. But it was him, not Laura Trott, who did have his numbers correct. Now, according to the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, that's the official organisation tasked with doing the government's homework when it comes to this kind of thing. They say that under the Tories' current plans, debt will be higher as a proportion of GDP in 5 years' time than it is right now. So I'm quoting from the latest OBR report here. Underlying public sector net debt, excluding the Bank of England, rises from 84.9% of GDP last year to a peak of 93.2% of GDP in 2026 to 2027, so higher, then falls slightly the final 2 years to 92.8% of GDP in 2028 to 2029. So at the moment it's 84.9%. It will drop. It will rise and then it will drop slightly to 92.8%. That's according to the OBR. And then this is what the OBR says next. The government's primary fiscal target is for public sector debt, excluding the Bank of England, to fall in the final year of the forecast on our central forecast, this rule is met by a margin of £13 billion, or 0.4% of GDP, up from £6.5 billion margin in our March forecast, where the target year was 2027 to 2028. This is a 6.5 billion improvement in headroom, and then they sort of explain the reasons why that has emerged. So what everyone is debating at the moment, when sort of Labour say the government are being really irresponsible because they've been given this £13 billion fiscal headroom and they're going to spend it on tax cuts. If we got this £13 billion fiscal headroom, we'd spend it on something more worthy. They're all debating within this framework, which, Aaron, to me seems kind of dumb, right? And I think it's kind of evidence that it's kind of dumb that the chief financial secretary to the Treasury, so the one person in the country who's supposed to be most responsible for this, doesn't understand it. So that every budget, the Chancellor stands up and say, I have £6 billion headroom, I have £13 billion headroom. And it seems like these numbers are just being plucked from the air.
None of them are real, Michael. There's a key insight for you. None of this is real. All of it's make-believe. The OBR, which was created by George Osborne straight after the 2010 general election. By the way, Labour and Rachel Reeves want to give it more power. They're saying any budgetary proposal that we propose has to be signed off by the OBR, which again is part of their permanent austerity mindset. Now, the OBR said that the deficit would be eliminated by 2015. They said this in 2010. Michael, it's 2024. We've had a deficit every year since. So these people are political. And, the projections from the OBR in terms of deficits, debt, and so on, I think they were wrong every year from like 2010 to 2017. Every year. So this idea that we're going to base our tax on, they're all fake numbers. This is the thing, Michael. Look, China does 5-year plans. Now, you can have lots of criticisms of China. So the political system is so ambiguous. We don't know who has power. They write it all down. They literally write down the industries they're going to put money into. Okay, microprocessors, synthetic biology, e-commerce, 5G. They write it all down. We have 5-year plans based on like these fake numbers regarding our deficit. And then the tax giveaways that allows. We think we'll be in less debt than we think in 5 years' time. Therefore, scrap inheritance tax. It's a crazy way for a government to be carrying on. They should be thinking, how do we build wealth? How do we build prosperity? It's the complete opposite mindset. It's like somebody living, and I don't like to use the overdraft because we were talking about the credit card and public spending, but it's like somebody living in their overdraft because fundamentally deficits are fine. But we should be trying to generate wealth. We should be trying to create assets which generate wealth. We don't do that in this country. We haven't for a very long time. And the tax giveaways tend not to do that, as we've really worked out over the last 30 years. It's like living in your overdraft. And of course, I'm sure many other people have been like this. I certainly was. You get 500 quid, you're still £1,000 overdrawn, and you say, you know what, I'm going to go on a bender. That's basically the tax giveaway that the Tories are looking at in this context, when instead they should be saying, actually, I want to invest in this money in something else which will generate returns, social and economic, like social housing. No, we'll just give it away. So all of this debate is just so phony. It's not just about Laura Trott being not on top of the numbers, which she wasn't, but also just we're having conversations about, what the OBR says in 5 years' time, minus Bank of England debt. Why? Why minus Bank of England debt? Why? It's a public body. I mean, I know it's a bit, it's not quite, it's not like a quango or something, but it's a public body. The debt exists, it's real. It has a very clear relationship to the British state. So why would you not include Bank of England debt? When you do, by the way, it's close to 100% of GDP. And remember, in 2010, we had a debt to GDP of 60%, apparently end of the world. But now it's close to 100% when you include Bank of England debt. The Tories want to give tax giveaways. It's almost like austerity and the political program, which was offered by George Osborne and David Cameron after 2010, and so obsequiously allowed by Nick Clegg. It's almost like that was complete bullshit. It was a hoax. Austerity was a hoax. We know that 14 years later, and yet we now have a Labour leader broadly saying the same thing. And then my final point, Michael, which I understand, but still it's annoying, is that, Evan Davis had her on the hop. He had her on the hop. He'd caught her out, and he should have humiliated her. But he's a nice man. He's a nice man. And the cozy relationship in this country between politics and the media, because they're all in London, they all know each other. Predator is often prey. Many journalists become politicians. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't humiliate her. He should have. because this is a really important topic, Michael. This is life and death, okay? Public budgets and where we spend that money is a matter of life and death. It's a matter of where people are housed, when, can they access cancer treatment, can their kids go to university? Those are the stakes. So when a government minister screws up so publicly, so royally, do not let them off the hook. Your public duty is to humiliate them and extract them from them, rather, the truth, which is, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm completely incompetent. The government of this country has no handle on the public finances, and we should be booted out.